Hello, this is Cameron Sabet with Cutting to the Case, and today we're joined by Dr. Robert Langer. He's an institute professor at MIT, the university's highest faculty distinction held by only a handful of professors, and one of the most influential biomedical inventors in history. He pioneered controlled drug delivery and helped lay the foundations of tissue engineering and has authored more than 1,600 papers and holds more than 1,500 issued or pending patents. His technologies have been licensed to more than 400 companies, and he's helped found dozens of biotechnology companies, including Moderna. He's also trained hundreds of scientists and entrepreneurs, creating what has become known as the Langer Tree, a network of former trainees who have gone on to found companies and lead laboratories around the world. His honors include both the U.S. National Medal of Science and National Medal of Technology and Innovation, the Queen Elizabeth Prize for Engineering, the Breakthrough Prize, Kyoto Prize, and Millennium Technology Prize. Dr. Langer, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm curious, we only have a little bit of time here. When you're looking at medicine today, where do you see the biggest opportunities that we're all still missing?
Well, I always think it's what hasn't been, doesn't have a name because it hasn't been discovered yet. It's interesting. I mean, if you look at gene editing and CRISPR, which is the way that a lot of people edit genes, if you ask somebody about that question, about the 14, 15 years ago, and they would have said, well, gee, CRISPR, that has to do with cooking, but now, of course, it's become very, very important as a way of inserting genes. And that certainly is one of the big areas for today. But I think what's great about basic research is that sometimes people will discover things intentionally or unintentionally that can change the world and can change the future of medicine. And so I think that there are things that we don't know yet. Now, the areas that we do know, and certainly people will continue to make advances, are genetic therapies like gene editing, messenger RNA, siRNA, ways of turning genes on and off. And then I also think cellular therapies, whether they be engineered cells to treat cancer like CAR T cells or regenerative medicine approaches, which can affect longevity and make new tissues and organs, and even organs and tissues on a chip. So there's a lot of things that are going on that are very exciting.
Absolutely. And, from all of these insights that you've had, you've 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 helped build dozens of biotechnology companies. What have you learned about turning a scientific discovery into a company that actually succeeds?
It's a team effort, it's one thing to discover something and make an invention. It's very, very different to really get it out to the world. And it takes a real team. It takes great scientists, but it also takes great business people, great investors, people that can do manufacturing, people that are clinicians, and that team has to work together, and it's a struggle. It's very, very hard because there's many challenges. Anything along the way can stop you, and certainly medicine is not, medical research is not cheap. So, but it's incredibly important because it saves billions of lives.
And speaking of teamwork, you've met and trained thousands of brilliant people. What separates in your mind the ones who actually change the world from the people who are merely extremely intelligent?
Well, I think it's never giving up. I think it's laser kind of focus. It's being willing to walk through walls when there are issues, and it's really a passion, to really want to do something that'll make a giant difference.
And there's passion and there's walking through walls, but you've had ideas that experts initially thought were impossible. How do you tell the difference between being ahead of everyone else and simply being wrong?
Yeah, well, that's a challenge. Sometimes it's a judgment call, and it also depends on what data you really have, whether somebody is telling you you're wrong because they're jealous or opinionated, or whether they really have good evidence that you're wrong. And I think it's important. When people told me I was wrong, I always listened, but it's hard not to. But I think that. I had certainly seen the data that we had, and it certainly made sense to me. And I felt it was theoretically possible, regardless of what people said.
Hmm. And how do you build a company around a technology when the market for that technology doesn't really exist yet?
Well, So the question is, how do you
How do you
create
build
a?
a company around a technology when the market for that technology doesn't really exist yet?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. There was a guy, was it Clayton Christensen, who wrote, called The Innovator's Dilemma. He wrote a book called that, and that's. But his point was that was what you wanted to do. Was a lot of times the things that have been most successful, the market didn't exist, but you created that market because of that discovery, and so I think. Um, how do you do it? I think it's like you realize, even if other people don't, that maybe what you've done to create opportunities that never existed before, but they couldn't exist because that discovery or invention hadn't been made. And then you think through how that can make the biggest difference now.
Yeah. Yes. And when you think about, Moderna, for instance, what did the creation of Moderna teach you about building a company around a technology that still had enormous scientific uncertainty?
Yeah, well, Moderna, that again is a great example of a team effort. We had a great CEO, Stefan Bancel, Chairman Nubar Fayan, who was an investor in it as well, and just great scientists, Melissa Moore, Stephen Hogue, Kerry Bernardo. We had lots of just great people, a lot of my students. I think it just and people worked around the clock. When the COVID thing happened, they were working around the clock because they felt that they could make a giant difference, and I think that that people felt that we all felt that we were doing something very, very important. And I think when you're doing something, you feel that the research you're doing is very important, then and then people band together and they solve problems.
Yes. And it all really comes back to teamwork, and teamwork helps you spot those opportunities. When you look at medicine today, where do you see the biggest opportunities that we're still missing?
Well, I think it's a lot of it really comes down to basic science and understanding things better. I don't think we understand. I mean, there's certainly a lot we don't know about cancer, about why a cell becomes cancerous and how you can control it. There's a lot we don't know about the brain. And if we could, that might teach us how to stop diseases like Alzheimer's and others. So I think a lot does come down to the basic biology about what causes the abnormalities that we have, and so I think a lot of it's basic science, and
Hmm.
then the rest of it is technologies. I mean, technologies can make a giant difference. Better delivery systems, better imaging techniques, um, all kinds of things like that. Ways to target drugs to specific cells in the body.
And after over 1,500 patents and over 1,600 papers, are there still problems that keep you awake because you can't figure them out? Could you maybe expound on the number one problem in your head right now, scientifically?
Well, I mean, I don't know that there's a number one problem, but we're doing a lot in our lab to help people in the developing world working with the Gates Foundation on that. And that involves creating new vaccines, like a vaccine that you might just be self-boosting, so you could only have to take it once. The
Hmm.
pills that you could develop that might last for the entire course of treatment because people don't come back. So a pill that might last for a month or even a year. Um, Better nutrition. I mean, nutrition is certainly an area that is poorly understood, but we've been working on better ways of giving vital micronutrients and other kinds of nutritional things. So, I mean, there are just so many different things that end up being important.
With especially the polymer research. I mean, the PGPLA copolymers and all of these incredible new discoveries. What are the best kind of shining examples that you can think of outside of just outside of vaccines in the developmental world that really excites you about polymers as well?
Well, the big thing is targeting polymers or lipids to specific cell types.
Hmm.
If you could, I mean, if you could target cells better, if you could deliver a cell, if you could deliver a drug just to the cancer cell, I mean, or just to the brain, that would be a giant deal. I mean, so that would be very, very high on my list.
Hmm. And outside MIT, as I'm sure you're aware, it becomes very challenging to convince the public that basic science is a worthwhile pursuit. And it's shocking to people within the community. Like these are technologies that can change the world. How do you convince people outside of the scientific community that, for instance, murine models are worth pursuing, or places that are further away from clinical or applicable research?
Well, I think it depends on what you're trying to convince them of. I mean, the mirroring model, I mean, obviously you wouldn't want to drug test it on yourself before it was shown to be at least safe in some animal, I think. So I think that would be very important. I mean, if you have cancer or if you have Alzheimer's and there's a good drug, that would be wonderful. But you'd want to know that it wouldn't kill you immediately. I mean, that would be, and that it wouldn't cause other problems. So I think you do need to have animal model testing. I mean, the FDA, requires that. And I think even if they didn't, you'd want it done because you want to know that what you're taking is, you don't, I mean, it's sad, but I mean, you want, people, you want to make sure that everything's safe, even if you have to, treat, you use some animal models. But how you convince the public, I mean, I think it's really the media that can do that. And I think the media, hopefully can do an honest job of getting across the negatives and the positives of any kind of research. But I think the positives to me have so outweighed the negatives because people today, if you compare us now to a little over 100 years ago, I mean, probably people live double the lifetime, they're healthier, happier, and so forth.
And after everything you've accomplished, if your career had to be remembered for one idea rather than all the awards, companies, papers, patents, what would you want that idea to be?
I think it's probably the delivery systems that we developed that involve polymers and lipids that can, that were essential really to protect and deliver drugs, ranging from the COVID vaccine to drug-eluting stents, new cancer treatments, new mental health treatments. Again, that's probably the biggest, I think that it's affected, I think I did win a recent award, the Welch Award, which I guess is presents the top chemistry prize in the United States. And they mentioned that well over 1 billion people have used the things that we've done,
Well,
to improve their lives.
I would say that's an understatement with Moderna especially, but
Yeah, well, yeah, well, maybe it's many billions, but yeah.
yes, yes, certainly. So I'm curious if you had advice for the audience of the show, which is primarily early career researchers and medical students and early career business leaders as well, what would you have to say to them?
Well, I guess, when I've given commencement speeches at universities, one of my friends summed it up, which is that in a few words, that I usually tell people to dream big and never give up. And I think both aspects are important. Dreaming big, don't do something that's incremental. Do something just because it's secure. Try to do something that'll make a giant difference. The don't give up part, yeah, I probably amended over the years because sometimes you do. So I changed it to almost never give up, but because obviously, but certainly you don't give up easily, and but that would be the advice I'd give.
That's fantastic advice. Just a little thing there. When you said almost never give up, could you maybe elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, well, I think it depends on what the reason is why you're not getting what you want. In other words, is it that somebody else has come up with a better idea for the particular treatment? I mean, just to pick an example, years ago, I rarely would give up, but we came up with this idea of getting rid of bilirubin to treat jaundice and using enzymes. This was many, many, many years ago, and it worked. We did this in animals; it worked beautifully. But around the same time, people came up with the same idea. I'm sorry, with the idea of using light to change the nature of bilirubin so that you could put a baby under light if they got jaundice. I felt that was a better idea, be safer, simpler, and so we didn't continue the work we did on that. I mean, that's just one example.
Hmm. Yes, and I wanted to be very respectful of your time as well. Thank you very much for joining. Um, I understand that this is an incredible experience for people to hear from the Dr. Robert Langer, and I appreciate you taking the time to join our show today.
Oh, well, it's a pleasure. You did a great job, and thank you for the questions, and it's very nice to meet you.
Thank you very much. And I hope you have a wonderful day. And this is Cameron Sabet, and this is Cutting to the Case, and I'm signing off.